planes, it's probably going to be smaller. The next area we're going to be working on is right here by the tower where we've cleared this already, and we'll be clearing this area.
Who's doing the clearing and how they're doing it?
Right now, my crews are doing the clearing with our grader and our trucks and our loader, and the street department will be assisting. I'm not sure if they're out there today yet, but they will be assisting as well with the grader and loader and trucks. So we'll be moving all of the material that we pull off of there. It's mostly grass. Through them, and we would close runway 17 for a relatively short period of time, probably a few weeks to a few months. Basically, so we have somewhere to put airplanes that land, and then when we have permanent spots for them, we can start moving them off into those permanent spots.
Is controlling the dust, once you pull that grass off, and everything, how big of a concern is dust?
I've got a concern with that. I'm not sure. You know, we'll be putting water on it while we're moving it, so hopefully we pick more of it up. But honestly, we haven't gotten quite that far.
Should we put slurry on it? I don't think.
In the long run, I
I don't
think.
think that's cost effective.
Yeah, I was going to say it's expensive. You'd be better off with some oil.
Okay,
But
should align them all.
Yep.
If the
Yep.
FAA thinks it might be a problem, I don't know. You're coming up on
in
gonna start getting wind.
Yeah, in the past, when we have scraped those areas, it has not caused, really the FAA is more concerned about either a FOD issue or a visibility issue. And quite honestly, the cornfield over on the Brown Ranch brings us more visibility issues than the stuff that we've scraped before. So we do get some, and so we're kind of playing that by ear to a certain extent.
Okay. I'm gonna talk about shifting of the planes on
So what we've got right now over here is we've got the Maxes stored here, and those will need to be compressed somewhat to make some more room. But we're going to be making a priority of this concrete and this concrete and this concrete, all for what we're calling active storage, or what Randy calls hot storage, where those guys are going to bring those airplanes in. They want them to be there for a little while, but they want to come out, turn the key, start it up, and fly it away. So those areas will be prioritized for that. Right now, there's a lot of mixed storage on there. There's some that are in that shape. There's a lot that are not. Those planes have already begun to be moved. Airsail has been moving off of this side down to Old Foxtrot here. But we have a lot of room still left over there, so we'll continue to move those. We're going to try to prioritize everything that's not flyable farthest away from the concrete and the priority areas, so that we can get as many of those aircraft in clean spots as we can. Did I miss anything?
Randy, you want to throw anything in there?
No, I mean, the plans that the airlines have are changing by the hour. I think that you're not going to see a lot of storage airplanes that are, like I said, hot storage or ready for flight. I think most of those are going to stay with the airlines somewhere. What we're going to see here is a lot of the long-term storage, short-term storage, aircraft that are retiring, or aircraft that will come in and will be flipped or sold to another carrier. The regionals, I think the majors are going to start parking some of the regional lines, and those aircraft will be flipped pretty quickly and go into another regional airline. But right now, you could put your finger on a good plan. It's literally, airplanes are trickling in, I can tell you that. Like you said, we had 777 show up yesterday, a 767 show up yesterday. Today, American is bringing 2 777s. One got here this morning, another will be here this afternoon. United's bringing a 777 today. American will probably bring another 2 777s tomorrow, and then an American 777 on Saturday. Other than that, this huge wave of aircraft is not happened yet. It may happen, but I have a feeling it's going to be a more controlled wave. It's not going to be this huge, oh my God, 100 airplanes showing up tomorrow. It's probably going to be kind of like it is now. It's trickling, and then it's going to end up being 10 to so airplanes a day per customer. So you could see upwards of 20 aircraft hitting the ground here, in a day, 10 American, 10 United, and then we're talking to a couple of other folks too that are looking for spots to park airplanes.
Jim?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Long-term storage and long-term storage for, you start tearing these airplanes down. Some of the discussions we've had here recently on tear down pads, right, and warehousing. I mean, you get that many airplanes coming in, fantastic. And, we talk them into leaving them and taking them apart. We got to maybe look at the future here pretty soon, what we're going to do with the parts, how we're going to tear them down. Because I think you're going to have congestion on the pads that you now have. So this is something to think about. We're going to watch what comes in, but we also got to think about the impact 6 months from now. So that's the kind of questions we'll be asking.
Yep, yeah, I agree. That's going to drive a lot of what we've been talking about already.
Did I guess you?
My question was just to Randy, the planes that you're speaking of that are already on their way in, is this all related to international flights being curtailed?
Some of them are. Some Americans have some aircraft that they're bringing out of Hong Kong. There is United Airlines has aircraft in Hong Kong they're bringing out. They've also got an aircraft in down in South America, Colombia. They've got a 777 there they're going to bring out. That's all the international aircraft I know of. Just as an FYI, they are disinfecting the aircraft before they come. They do that on a normal basis, but we did make sure we had that conversation. They'll disinfect the cabin of the airplane. We'll take care of the cockpit because the flight deck, because the crew's in there. Can't disinfect it until they get on the ground. So we do have that plan in place. All the aircraft, I haven't heard any dismantle talk at all. All the aircraft that we're receiving are going into long-term storage.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's it.
Scott, it sounds like you're gonna have several tens of acres, 40, 50 acres or more. It's gonna be scarified out there. We've had a lot of rain. That's unique, uncommon for here. And it's the middle of March. The wind's gonna start blowing. So have we got enough water trucks to keep that down out there?
So we've got one on the airport it's a small one, it's 2,000 gallons. So yeah, that's not going to go too far to be running all the time. So it'll work while we're grading. Once we get it all cleaned off, we'll just have to see. The state has a 4,000 gallon water truck that we've used in the past too, that's located out at the academy. And we probably will be able to enlist their help as well. We've already had discussions with them, and they run classes all the time, so that's one of the things that they could put into their class. So that's not necessarily timely for us, but the other thing we're looking at doing is seeing what the cost would be to spray herbicide out there so we don't have the grass come up, and wind up with the same problem again. And we would like to apply that before we start getting a lot of airplanes out there so that we keep that clean. We can always run our sweeper, but that's a huge area with a lot of loose material. It'll fill up very quickly. So Brose brooms are a possibility to go out there and sweep it, but you don't want to lose too much of the material either. So it's a challenge. We still have to work it out.
When the wind starts blowing that much acreage, there's gonna be dirt getting on everything out there. That's just gonna happen.
Yeah, and that happens normally just from the fields to the west of us. So yeah, this is going to be worse.
This is right there.
Yep.
So if you think 6,000 gallons of trucks, water trucks is enough, but you're gonna have to run the water.
Yep.
Anything else?
That's all I've got.
So I can sit down.
You can. Thank you, Vanna.
Which one? What?
So we're skipping 6.
Oh, yeah. We're actually live streaming according to Ms. Call, so we need to be sure and use the microphones.
6 is not going to happen because they're not present.
Right.
He couldn't come in, right?
Yeah, they had travel restrictions.
Okay, so we will hopefully put that off till next month. And then 7.
It's
this is-
sort of me, sort of you.
Yeah, well,
And
this was a lot of, some question about availability. And what did you want to talk about what's going on?
So for number 7, I wanted to bring up the point, the subject of rescheduling again, and it really is because, I don't know if you guys remember, Mark and I were supposed to be at the aviation convention in Ruidoso. Well, we canceled it, so now we're available. So I wanted to put it back on the schedule again for you guys to make the decision. If you want to keep it on the 23rd, that's fine, but give you the opportunity to move it back to the 16th.
Oh, we talked about moving it to the 23rd.
Yeah, we voted to move it to the 23rd, and so that's where it is right now.
All right, any folks, what do you think? 23rd?
I'm good either way.
Right now, I'm good either way.
Bud? Okay.
I don't think it's really an issue for us, but legal's the
Jim?
same day, if it happens.
23rd's okay.
Let's go ahead and go with it. It gives us a little more breathing space for the drama that's going on around us, and that way we can.
Okay.
So, we will not be, we have already scheduled it for April 23rd, so we
Correct.
do not need to reschedule it.
You don't need to do anything.
All right, and does that work for you, Counselor?
I'm thinking, we typically have a conflict, so, yes.
Okay. And you can have legal after that?
And we don't meet till 4.
Ah, okay.
It'll just make our day busy, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We're used to
Okay.
that.
All right. Then we're on to item number 8.
Yes, we are. So I will toss the ball to Mr. Holloman. He's got all the handouts. I hope everybody got one. But I think we're getting close on this. So with that, there you go.
I did hand out this to everybody. So it should have the slide that we presented last week or month. This again is just to show you the evolution of our goal of what we're trying to achieve. We're moving from 80 separate sections down to, as you can see in your handout, 8. So to refresh your memory, the blue is what we're going to keep in the actual ordinance itself, chapter 5 on the aviation. Green, the plan is to move that into the zoning code. The reddish orange would be in the property management code or property management policy, which we already have. And then the 2 new documents that we would need to create is the yellow is the rules and regulations, and then orange, the lighter orange, is the minimum standards. And I'll show you how we incorporate all of those documents into the ordinance itself. The 2 pages, you should have 2 separate documents in addition to that one is a clean version of the new ordinance and then a redlined version of the ordinance. I'll be reading off of the red line just so you can see how much of it we've changed and what we have changed, and then what, I mean, I think it's pretty dramatic to see how little we felt like was necessary once we can move everything into other documents. So you'll see each of the separate sections renumbers the existing ordinances or the new positions of the code so that it goes from sections 5-1 through section, 8 of the ordinance goes to 5-8. 5.1 is the scope. We did leave in the one definition of airport. We had envisioned taking out the entirety of all the definitions because all of those definitions that existed previously related to the minimum standards, so we'll move that into a separate document. There was continued reference throughout the existing language still to airport, so that definition was left in. 5-2 addresses the zoning laws. That is unchanged. It is just renumbered. 5-3 makes the change from manager to director, which is what the position is called now. That's just updating language to the current procedures. 5-4 is the rules and regulations section. We had an existing rules and regulations section in the old ordinance, but this has been updated to now make reference to and incorporate the two new documents we envision creating. One new document and one existing document. So you'll see that it says that the airport manager shall have the authority to prepare and present to the governing body for approval adoption of the following. That follows with what we had discussed our plan would be. These would be created as a policy, which is then adopted by the governing body in the form of a resolution. And that's how we've been trying to treat our policies, so that they just have another level of vetting to them. So A1 refers to rules and regulations as for the management and control of the airport. That is the existing or the contemplated regulations provision, which is yellow on that sheet. A2 refers to the maintenance of the structures and facilities and land which the air center is located. That makes reference to the property management policy that we've got. My idea had been, once we have those documents named, to actually use the name of those documents there, but we don't have names for them yet. So that we might leave to as one thing that could be updated further. B then just gives us the right to enforce those rules and regulations through whatever processes are available. Section 5-5 is the reference to the third outside document, which is the minimum standards. We had an entire section of the ordinance dedicated to this. The plan is to offload this into a separate document again to be separately approved. It just makes reference to the fact that we're using this specific advisory circular. It will be administered by the airport manager and that copies will be available. Section 5-6 is unchanged. It's just moved the city's right to concession and sales. Section 5-7, same thing, unchanged, just moved. And then 5-8 adds the additional language of, I don't know that this is strictly necessary, but just to kind of belts and suspenders it, any violations that are unlawful, we then have the right to impose a fine or provide penalties, pursue penalties as provided by law. So with that, that accomplishes step one of this, is to redo the actual ordinance itself. The next step in terms of ordinances will be to incorporate the language into the zoning code. I haven't had an opportunity yet to discuss this with the zoning department as to where they think it would best fit. So I didn't want to present that to you without numbers as to where those needed to go. But then after that, it's a matter of, we've got for the most part, we have the property management plan. It'll just be to address and revise those other two documents to make sure that we have the ability to reference that. So once we've accomplished those, that's kind of our path forward. And once we have that done, I think that we can take it almost as a legislative package and move through committees on this. At the last legal committee, we did have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all right, go ahead, but I do have a question.
Okay. At the last legal committee, we did present this as we had presented the same thing to you. We didn't have any questions, but I do think people were generally supportive, the counselors were. With that, any questions?
Well, so we're in section 3, where, and in section 5, where you change from manager to director, you've crossed out manager in that section, but the section 4, where it says the airport manager, should that be director?
Oh.
And then you have the same thing in section 5, but I guess my point is anywhere where you have airport manager, that should now be airport director, is that correct?
That is correct. I had trouble with the server as I was preparing to print these off, and I might have grabbed the wrong version of this.
Okay.
But yes, everywhere that it says director, it should have been updated to, everywhere manager should be updated to director.
Okay. Good catch.
Yes, thank you.
That's why we want this. Okay. You want to talk a little bit about your situation? So I don't think the commission knows.
Okay. I I have accepted a position with the city of Albuquerque. Obviously, that is all kind of in flux now. My last day, as of now, is scheduled to be April 23rd. So that'll be go out on a high note with a lot of meetings. So I will be here. I'm continuing to work and working until my last day. And then the deputy city attorney will be handling in an acting capacity until we've had time to fill everything else up. We will have, all of our projects he's been updated on, and I'm trying to push forward some of these things to make sure that we get things cleaned up. But anything you need up to that point, please let me know.
Okay. Commissioner?
You know there's gonna be more coronavirus in Albuquerque.
Actually, they've got 14 cases in Bernalillo County, and we have 0 in Chaves County.
Right.
It's coming.
No, let's think positive. We're positive here. We're positive.
They're testing today, remember?
I was out there this morning.
Scotty, Aaron, what about kids? Are you gonna leave them in Hobbs?
Yeah, we're coming up with plans for how we're going to manage that. Okay. Hobbs sounds great right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate
Yes,
your
Aaron,
hard
you've
work.
done a great job on
Well,
this.
thank you for saying
We
that.
wish you well.
Thank you.
No, we wish he wasn't leaving. There's a difference. Burn in hell. Got Counselor Stubbs.
Again, some medical stuff, Aaron, in section 6, 5-32, in both paragraphs, it says Roswell Municipal Airport.
That was thank you for reminding me. I know some people, and it's just a matter of preference. I prefer a defined term to be capitalized, but as I was going through this, a lot of these instances were not capitalized. So director is not capitalized, airport is not capitalized throughout. And then the definition Roswell Municipal Airport as opposed to just airport itself. So I would be open to whatever your drafting preferences are on that.
Should be Roswell Air Center.
I think
Well, and that was my other question, is I didn't know whether to refer to it to Air Center or Airport, but we are attending the Airport Advisory Commission, so.
I would think you could do it either way. If you say Air Center, you're tied to the name. I don't anticipate the name to change anytime soon.
Okay.
Since we just did it. But if you say airport, you're not tied to the name.
That's a good point. Okay. So where I'd like to go with this, just so you folks, I may have discussed this last month, but this is my desire. And I do have a vote. Anyway, I want to call it pinkish orange colored section was the resolution we sent on to legal last month. Is that correct, Mr. Holloman?
That one is separate and not reflected on this chart itself. The fees has been pulled off. This one is the property management policy that we had started to look at the beginning or at the end of last year.
Okay.
And
So it's the fees resolution is not one of these 5.
That's right.
Okay. But we have sent that on to legal for review. Then what I am desiring to do is, if we can reach consensus today, send the blue section, which is before us, on to legal. And the question I'm struggling with is, do we need to have the fees, the blue section, the green, and this other color, reddish color, all acted upon at the same time? Do we need to have all 5 colors acted upon at the same time, plus the fees? What is your?
The best way to handle it, I would think that the 3 that we would want to have together all at once is the blue, the original ordinance, the green, the changes to the zoning code, and then the fees resolution.
Okay.
All of that would go into place at the same time, because that is the actual change to the law and takes longer because you have to have the 2 hearings at the city council level. The other 2, because they're referenced and because they're going to take more time to develop anyway, I think that those are not as important to have passed along with those other 3, or I guess actually the current 3, property management plan, regulations, and the minimum standards could all go through at a separate time and even individually as those get created and finalized.
Okay. So, Counselor Stubbs, this is where you become an integral part of this, and I truly appreciate you making the time. I do. Yes, I do. We all love you. But I'd like to go ahead and, like I said, my objective would be send on this to you for review at legal, but don't go from legal to the council until the green section is to you. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, and so I don't know what the rest of the commission thinks of that approach, but we take one more bite next month at the green section, be able to send that on, and that would be able to get us, one of my objectives is I want our tenants to know what to expect, and I want things nailed down. Come on up here, Counselor. Why don't you jump in here?
Thank you both. The only thing I'm thinking, Mr. Chair, is did we put, I don't remember if we put a date that the fees start.
Yeah, we
So
have
we
it
may-
October 1. It was in that resolution.
So if those don't go to council till when, help me on that. If they don't go,
They could be adopted theoretically in the May council meeting, and that would give 5 months
no,
advance.
because you're not going to finalize them till, the zoning till
It could be
April
But
meeting.
we could implement the resolution to kind of give so that the tenants know.
Okay,
come
that's what my
October.
concern is we talked last month about needing to give them ample time to adjust to new fees. So that's my only thing, if that,
And I do know, just
because
so.
it's a resolution.
We had, Scott and I had a conversation was it last week? Where one of the other vendors there was already planning to, shall we say, budget for the new fees. You want to jump in here at all, Scott?
So, I brought the, so there's copies of the, never mind. So, anyway, we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, that's the next item, but honestly, nothing has changed on that. From what we saw last time, I wasn't there, but legal reviewed it, and I understand there was really no concerns about the fees, from what Mark told me. But the one thing that we have been talking about is, how we time this. That's, I can say that Randy's got a copy of it, Kavu's got a copy of it, Jen Air's got a copy of it, American's got a copy of it. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of talk around it, other than for Randy's case and Kavu's too, what's the timing, budgeting for them. So that is important. With these other aircraft coming in, I think that becomes even more important because they've got to make decisions now based on those airplanes. So it's important, I think, that either they look at what we're doing and the numbers are fairly fixed for the future and they can go ahead and start using those, or that they use the same structure we have now and that they know when that ends. So, I think we've not been quiet about it being October 1st, and I would throw that out to you, Randy, and anybody else who wants to comment. Is that okay? So.
So, when United, for example, so we have a contract with United that was negotiated last year, end of last year, with our sister company over in Goodyear, Arizona. So what they're trying to do what we're trying to do, Aircell's trying to do is, it was the same contract we use for United or American or whatever our customer is, that we're using in Goodyear, we use here. The same contracts we use here, the same pricing for Goodyear. So parking fees was one of those things we negotiated. The pricing for the parking was based on the current rates, okay? So now we've signed up to, and United has signed up to this, to an agreement based on the current rates. Well, once the new rates kick in, we'll be underwater as far as what we're charging United for parking fees. So our request would be, at least for the United side of it, is not to, can we be flexible enough where we're not raising the rates for just carte blanche for everybody, that you have a set of rates for this. I can leave the current rates for United at least till the end of the year. So it's more palatable to a customer if I go at the end of the year and go, hey, due to whatever's happened, rates are increasing for the next year. But for this year, I'd rather not have an increase in October that's going to have a negative effect to it.
So my thoughts on that are simply that we either make sure that the language that's in it covers the transition period, or that we push the date back.
I thought we put in the wording that on these prices and everything else, that the director is gonna have
Right.
the opportunity to negotiate with the customers a fair price on everything.
Right.
And so we're more fluid with managing our property. Is that not true?
No, I think that's what the way we had approached it, and I printed the wrong handout, so I apologize for
I
that.
just-
But that's the way I remember it too.
Okay.
But yeah, so that we had the flexibility where basically I could approach Randy and just say, okay, you guys are in this already. I understand it's going to kill you if we go up, and it would. So we just come to an agreement between us that we set the date based on their needs, and it does go up eventually, but we set the date based. We can be flexible and set the date.
Well, he's talking about per customer, so you guys are gonna know how much space it's gonna take up and what that market value is of that square footage or acres or whatever it is. So you can negotiate. He can negotiate with United and you can work with your customers. So I was hoping that I did remember that correctly, that you have the ability to negotiate with them.
Yeah, I think in my mind, from what I remember of the resolution, that allows that flexibility to do so.
Thanks.
Okay, so Mr. Holloman, do you believe that Mr. Stark can negotiate a different rate based upon the wording of the resolution that we sent on to legal?
A different rate or a different date?
No, good point. To be able to maintain the current rate, in other words, everything doesn't kick in October 1. Well, that would be in essence a different rate, though. But anyway, does he have flexibility to do what we're talking about here?
I don't have he has a copy.
I do.
in front of him.
Thank you, Counselor Stubbs. Rates and fees. Yeah. Nope, not there. Maybe on the exhibit page, because it was in 10. So. I remember seeing it. I know we talked about it.
It's, under the landing charges, it says the landing charges may be negotiated. Let's see.
I would suggest that it's not in there. We put it in there. I'm not seeing it. I know we talked about it. Landing parking, so no, it's not in the parking.
Oh, yeah.
Landing charges. Yeah, and I remember we talked about that, and that was what I had made sure Mark wanted to put that in there, but it doesn't look like he made it.
Okay, my inclination is, and I'm not married to this and I'm interested to hear other people's thoughts, is to make it simpler is if we want to push it back 2 months to January 1, just do that. And
I'm fine with that.
all right. Now, the interesting thing is this is already at legal. The resolution, the fees are already at legal.
It wasn't an action item, right? It was just a discussion item?
No, but we passed it and sent it on to you. So I put it It's in your bailiwick. I mean, we can now recommend that the implementation be January 1, but you will have to amend. Okay. Mr. Kunkel?
Larry, does a January 1 date accommodate your contracts?
You mean Randy?
I'm sorry, Randy, I'm sorry.
Well, you know, so that, like the United contract is, I can't remember, it's a 3 or 5 year deal. But when we amend our contracts, we usually do that at the end of the year, so I can go in and amend it. December, letting United know that, hey, we're getting ready to do this. I'd rather not do that right now with, you know, who knows, 100 aircraft heading this way, and then I go, oh, by the way, you know, the contractor rate for parking just went up. It looks like we're trying to gap a little bit. Rather not do that. So we don't upset the apple cart now. I can put that in front of them in January or in December, letting them know, hey, as of January 1st, the new rates are X.
Are CAVU's contracts and
I have no clue.
Generators, you
Although,
don't know?
you know, should we receive aircraft, I mean, if the rates did go up in October, and I have new customers in October, that's a different story, and I've got a new contract this and that, but for the customers that I have right now, I don't want those rates being increased until the end of the year, January.
So I would move that the commission recommend to legal that the date of implementation be changed to January 1, 2021.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Kunkel and a second by Commissioner Armstrong to change the effective date for the new fees to January 1, 2021. Do we have any discussion on that?
I would second that.
No, we already got a second. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, passes unanimously. Now, the recommendation to legal committee is that effective January 1, 2021. And Randy, my 2 cents worth is I would start, anybody new walks in the door now, you use the new rates, and if you end up, if they come before January and you make a little extra on it, I got no problems with that, if you get where I'm coming from. So, in other words, you charge them the new rates from the get-go. Not trying to tell you how to run your business, but I wouldn't have any problem with you guys doing it.
We use a boilerplate contract when we send it out, so anything that I would agree to today, I'm gonna have to.
Oh, no, I know,
make sure
I know.
Goodyear does the same thing. We basically have a single contract that we send out. So whatever pricing is on there, it's Goodyear will have to use the same one.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to the ordinance for Section 5. We've already got noted here the change in Section 4, where it becomes airport director instead of airport manager. Any other changes or we want to highlight or corrections? Any other comments about this as a whole? Yeah, and we've discussed that, but I don't know if we have any, do we have a problem with it being called the Roswell Municipal Airport in this document?
Okay, we talked about making it the Roswell Air Center.
Do we want to do that? I mean, I don't have a motion yet. If I have a motion, we'll act on
I
it.
like the consistency of keeping it the same throughout the document. Do you?
Okay. So,
It is known as the Roswell Air Center, is it not? Where else is it called the Roswell Municipal Airport? Then it needs to be the Roswell Air Center.
If I might, I left that vestige in with the intention that it would be changed throughout, but I did want to present just this is how it has been represented before. So my suggestion would be to either change airport. That should either be Air Center or Roswell Air Center. So everywhere it says airport or Roswell Municipal, it would be changed to the same term. So I just don't know which you prefer, Airport, Air Center, Roswell Municipal Air Center.
I think you're gonna create a lot of confusion. Maybe not, but if you're gonna call it the Roswell Air Center, that's what it ought to be in all the documents.
Mr. Chair,
Sir?
I move that we call it the Roswell Air Center.
Now, does this, now, we're changing all references of airport to air center, because it's all through this document.
It's my understanding that's what it is known as.
Okay, it's like, for example, just, and I'm not, I want to make sure we all understand, like in section 3, it talks about the director of the municipal airport, that would be director of the air center.
The other option is, in the first whereas, after Roswell Air Center is mentioned, you could put in parentheses, airport, and then just use the word airport with a capital A throughout the document.
You like,
If it's referenced that way in the first whereas, known as the Roswell Air Center, parentheses, the airport, or airport with a capital A, and then it's referenced that way consistently throughout the document, it makes it a little more simpler, but it's consistent.
okay, now let me ask you this, while we're still chatting about this. We have the phrase municipal airport. Does that need to be just,
Goes away.
Goes away.
we just say director of the airport,
Yes.
the airport director, the airport director, and airport would become capitalized. All right, let me ask Mr. Holloman, what do you think about that?
Simplify, simplify, simplify.
That works, and I can do that to use airport throughout.
Okay, Mr. Kunkel, you had a motion, but we haven't had a second yet. Wait a minute, we haven't had a second.
Don't second, Riley.
Yeah, don't second. So are you happy with what Commissioner?
That simplifies the document further with what Amy just said.
Okay,
That's fine.
all right. So, we do not have, we'll withdraw that motion because we did not get a second. Shh.
I withdraw the motion.
Withdraw the motion. Now, Ms. Call,
Okay.
Commissioner Call, you want to make your recommendation?
All right, I will move that in the document, in the first whereas, after the term "the Roswell Air Center," we put in parentheses, "the airport" with a capital A, and then use that terminology throughout the document to refer to the airport.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Call to amend the first whereas. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Armstrong to add in parentheses after Roswell Air Center, the capital A airport in paren. Any discussion or debate on this? Before we go any further, Counselor Stubbs, this comes to you eventually, and you're comfortable with how this is working out?
As one of four, yes.
I understand, but an important one of four. And Mr. Holloman, once again, you are comfortable with that?
I am.
All right. Any other discussion? All right. Mr. Burris? No? All right. All right, all those in favor of the change signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, passes unanimously. We are now on an amended proposed ordinance for Section 5. And as I indicated, if this is now acceptable to this commission, I would like to entertain a motion to forward this document to the legal committee for further action and presentation to the city council.
So moved.
And we have a motion by Commissioner Kunkel to approve the proposed amended ordinance for Section 5 and send it to the legal committee for further action. Do I have a second? I have a second by Commissioner Burris. Any debate or discussion on the amended proposed ordinance? Okay, let the record reflect there's no further discussion. All those in favor of sending the amended proposed ordinance to the city council, to the legal committee of the city council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. All right. So on that note, Mr. Holloman, next month you can have us the cleaned up version of this.
So I can have the cleaned up version of that and then the zoning code change, which should be the two ordinances we need.
Okay, that works. Okay, so we've actually beat up 8 and 9 at the same time, which is a highly efficient use of our time. And I would put us at item number 10, and you want to talk some more about the tear down options. You want me to, does Vanna need to be up there again? I don't think he heard me. Does Vanna need to be up there again?
Maybe in a second.
Okay.
How many of you already have the handout, and who wants it? I want to make sure I got one, but. Okay. So there has been a little bit of movement, and I won't have Vanna come up with a map just yet, because I think we're all familiar with where we've been talking about everything. We went to Lewis Nahar to get some numbers, engineers' estimates, and that type of thing on what it might cost, and that's what you have in front of you. It's got a breakdown of everything in front of it. So that's Lewis's estimate with the city building it, using our maintenance contract. The one thing he suggested in the email when he responded to us was that we might get it quite a bit cheaper, down to in the 600,000 range if we bid it. So that, I would think that would be a very good idea. The other papers that are behind you've already seen, but I put them for reference in there. That's the specs that we've been using of how we want to build it, and so that was just a reminder to you guys. So that's really where we are, is that we've gotten these further numbers. We've also been talking to a couple of folks who are interested in building it, and they come up with some other numbers for, I'm not sure that they're complete for the whole thing, but the concrete numbers are much lower. So the final cost of the thing really is pretty fluid. And I think we would define that more if we were to put it out for an RFP if we want to do it, or we can continue the conversations with the folks that we've been talking to about building it and see where that goes.
A quick question. Did Mr. Nahar give you any kind of estimate on a timeline to do it if we did it ourselves?
No, I don't think he did. At least not to me, he didn't. You know, I apologize for Mark not being here. He did more of the talking than I did, but.
Where I'm going with this is we've told Air Sale cease and desist at that area
Yeah.
January 1. We need to have some place up and functional well before January 1. And so that's I don't have a problem with this continuing to discuss this with other options rather than we spending money, but we could do this for another month, I think, but at some point we're going to have to either have somebody committed to doing it or we pull the trigger on doing it ourselves.
And I think the
That's my
same. I think
thoughts.
we kind of need to decide on our timeline on when we decide nobody else is going to do it and we're going to. Like I said, I know that the folks that we're discussing it with are serious about it, but what their timeline is, I don't know. So that probably would be a discussion that needs to be had.
So who you're talking about based on the timeline, potential contractors, is that who you're referring to?
One of our tenants and a contractor.
Okay. So does this go out as a RFP?
Yeah, if we do it.
Okay.
It would be ITB. It would be an invitation to bid. So we would, my assumption is that we would put together actual engineering drawings and say this is what we want it to look like and put it out as an invitation to bid on it.
So what?
That way we
what's-
get what we asked for.
Right. So what's the timeline for that?
That's usually about 120 days, I think, for an RFP, a little shorter for an ITB. Because we normally have to run an RFP through a committee and have them look at it, and then we'll run it out for its time frame. But an ITB is a little shorter. So
What's the estimated construction time? Do you know?
not off the top of my head, but the last time that Custom Construction did the one that's out there now, it took about 2 months. It was fairly short.
So, am I thinking correctly then that this needs to be, based on your comments, Mr. Chairman, that this needs to be moved forward fairly quickly.
within the next few months, I think.
Yeah, what I'm thinking here is let's let staff maybe start putting together an ITB, let them draft one up to it so we have it in, if we have to go that route. I think the preference is we find somebody who wants to do this on their own nickel and run it, but if that doesn't happen, we can't leave air sale in the lurch. So I'm thinking we're kind of follow two paths, is what I'm thinking. One is we go ahead and get the ITB or RFP, whichever way we want to go, get that in the works.
And yeah, Randy's itching to say something, so.
Where are you planning on?
So we were looking down in the area where the other two currently are, down on the south end.
Yeah, somewhere in this area here.
And then the other concern I have is also for Randy, but and I'm not 100% sure how we address this, but if we have someone doing a private and we say to Randy, okay, you guys, we already have cease and desist on January 1st. And what happens if AirSale doesn't like the deal that other private company is offering? So where does that leave them? I mean, we don't have a full monopoly then, but I think we still have a problem. Go ahead.
That's exactly what I talked about when we had this discussion before. It's fantastic if someone wants to spend money, well, it's in the past, that's great. There's nothing that says they can't. However, I do feel that the city and the airport are moving it on, just for that very reason. We have to be fair to all our customers. I think we really look at the ones that negotiate rates, because this has an opportunity to chase off business.
Right.
So,
And that's my concern, is that if Randy can't negotiate something for a tear down on aircraft that they have with the owner of the new pad or the owner of the other pads, now where does he go?
Say, it's not her thing, we too, I really do suggest that, push forward on this RFP as quickly as possible.
Okay.
I think we should retain control.
Okay.
Are the two tear down pads that we have now available for anyone?
No. They're on land leases and leased by one company. So they can make deals with anybody they like, but they're under their control.
So to make sure that anybody can use this, the only way to do that is if the city owns a pad.
That's the only way I see.
Okay, so we've got two options, either the city builds it, or we get somebody else to build it for less than the city will build it,
Yes.
but they don't have ownership of it.
That would be the tricky, I would say, legal question, because how do you tell somebody you're leasing property to, then they put the capital investment into it, that they have to do it under certain rules? And I'm not going to say that's impossible, but I would want to tread carefully with that.
What I'm saying is have a contractor bid the thing. If this number is good, have another contractor who wants to do it, bid the thing, and if it's less than this, they just build it, and the city pays them for it.
Oh, yeah, as opposed to the city building it,
Yeah.
hiring a third party to do
So
the
that-
construction.
So that at least possibly gives us some benefit of pricing of construction.
Yes.
But I'm in absolute agreement that the public, the city, needs to maintain ownership of it, especially since the other two aren't. And then the city also has the flexibility on January 1 of each year, maybe, to change the rates of use.
True.
Okay.
Just so I understand, Scott, so you're talking about if you build a pad, then you'd be basically leasing it to AirSale? I mean, is that how you're?
No, what we're talking about is more of a hotel concept. So, for example, if we build it and maintain control of it, there would be a schedule, you would reserve it, and there would be a price for that. So AirSale comes and says, hey, we got a 777 coming, how long is it going to take you? It's going to take 2 weeks, we charge you per day, and it goes that way. And it's available to anybody, but if you're on it, it's not available to somebody else.
So you're gonna come up with some kind of rate schedule for?
Yeah, we would have to develop that, but yeah. And I don't know what that looks like, because I know that that's very different than the way that we do things now. So I would honestly want to discuss that with you and with others and see what sounds reasonable. Because I mean, I've heard lots of numbers in the past, and I know you guys have been made offers of some numbers that were just outrageous. So it made it impossible to do the business you do, and that's certainly not our goal.
I'm sure we'd want to build that into our pricing for our offer.
Right. Right.
Scott, the other thing, if it's gonna take, however we decide to do it, if it's gonna take 120 days to get something out, and you say 60 days to build it, we'll give it 90 days, you're talking 7 months already, which doesn't give anybody much time
No.
before January 1.
Right. So I would throw that out there too, that is it possible if we run into time extensions, could we change that date? I mean, we put that out there, but I don't want to just keep moving it. If we move it, I want to move it once and be there.
Okay.
But that was my thought, is if we run into some roadblocks that slow us down, then we may be in a position where we have to talk about moving that date.
So let me throw out this, you folks that chew on, kind of jumping ahead a little bit to like our item number 11, is have staff come back next month with a draft ITB or RFP, whichever's proposed, and a draft fee schedule to present on this whole thing. And we take a look at this package with, because what I'm sensing from the commission here is this, that we want the air center to maintain control of this pad and do a kind of a hotel model rental as needed.
And if we could back up a minute, and I agree for the next month to have that on the agenda, but so the other two, currently there's 2 tear down pads, correct?
Correct.
The city has no control?
They're on land leases, so they're leased by one of our tenants, and so it's basically their leasehold, so they control it that way. So to say no control is probably an exaggeration. We have what's in the lease.
Okay,
That's our control.
My question is, or a concern, and I haven't thought all the way through this, perhaps everybody else has, but what happens first of all, how long is the land lease where these pads are?
I believe we just renewed the newer one for 5 years, and usually that's pretty typical of what we're doing, is 5 years at a time.
Okay. So what happens if at the end of the 5 years that tenant says, we're done?
Even if they don't say we were done, at that point, we could choose not to renew the lease.
Okay. My question is then what happens to that pad?
It's ours.
And it's stated that way in the lease?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's my question.
And then to further that, just for another new one, if someone wants to build one, even if we build one, there's nothing to stop anyone from building another one, just another deal
Okay.
that we need to work out.
Well, we say that, but if you're talking $1.5 million to go build a pad, that's a pretty big capital investment to
Yep.
do that. And unless we've got adequate demand out there to go crunch a bunch of more airplanes up, nobody's gonna spend $1.5 million just to go build a pad.
I would agree with that.
So,
They're going to use ours because it's there and they can, rather than tying up their own capital in it.
and the goal is to allow aircraft teardown companies to make money, hire people, and we have employment. That's the goal.
Right. Because right now, we don't really have the flexibility, because we don't have the teardown pad that we can do it with. If someone owns an airplane, they say, well, we've tried to make deals with the folks here, we want to bring our own folks in and do that, we can't do that. If AirSail can't make a deal with somebody who's on an existing teardown pad, they have no options. So that's what we want, is to broaden the options.
And the other goal, obviously, is to get rid of that stuff
Yep.
right up there by the terminal,
Yep.
because it's unsightly, it causes problems with
Yep.
stuff getting out on, it just doesn't need to be there.
Agreed. And it's also a prime building spot if someone wants to build.
Okay. kind of going, I think, to the direction you're started down there. This was a conversation Scott and I had with one of the other companies here, and long conversation made brief is the desirability for Roswell to be everything from, for want of a better term, from soup to nuts. In other words, you come here, that Randy can pitch this to a potential customer, everything from storage to overhauls to painting to tear down. And you never have to move the plane off of here again. And then one of the other tidbits of that is that the extra thing would be a back shop, so we can overhaul the components that come off for the secondary market, and this is my fantasy, the large hangar that we've been kicking around for at least 7 years. But the tear down pad, you know, and you're right, this is the idea of make this available to customers, I think helps us with our flexibility and our desirability. So I think what the direction I'm hearing here is come back next month with a definitive plan for a city-controlled or air center-controlled tear-down pad. We have a third party build it. We don't use city personnel. We have a third party build it, and but we control it. And that sound agreeable to the group? Councilor Stubbs. Where will the money come from? That's part of the debate and discussion. Agreed. I mean, we're going to have to look at what do we have options. We can have that discussion. But that's part of the challenge, is looking at it. And we'll visit with the city manager about that budget. I mean, you've got some money in reserves. I think the new fees will help us, but they won't kick in till January 1. So we got to look at where we're at with a bunch of this stuff.
Yeah,
Maybe this becomes we're going to have to have it. We're going to have to pull it out of somewhere out of our money.
Yeah.
Want that to be part of this.
No.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It has to be. Even without the new fees kicking in, just the number of airplanes coming in, ticking up, that's going to help. And so it'll increase the reserves.
Okay.
Yeah. We
And so
need,
it's
we
good-
need to have that discussion.
Good thing Mr. Fuentes is here, because that's his bailiwick. But excellent point, Councilor Stubbs.
What's the current daily fee rate for a pad?
We don't have one because we don't run one. So I would ask at this point. So so that's kind of a long answer. So, but let me try to make it as short as I can. But basically, there are a couple of different models in the way these companies run their pads. The model that AirSail, correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, but the model that AirSail deals with custom construction on theirs, basically they sell the airplane to custom construction, and then it's his. So they don't care what he gets for the metal. It's his to tear it up and to sell it wherever they want. Kavu, on the other hand, goes to you and says, I'll cut your airplane up for a certain price. And whether they buy any and cut them up that way, they could do that too, and I believe they do some of their own that way. But there's different ways to do it. We really don't have anything that's similar to what we're talking about doing that's occurring right now. I don't know if there's anything like that going on at other airports where they do storage as well. I know they've got tear down pads too, and there's been a few places that have been one-offs that have happened out there where the airports have said, okay, you can go over here on this part of the ramp and tear it down, and they charge them. But I think that's an aircraft that's come in, broken down, whatever, and they needed to get rid of it for some reason. So, some of those where they do a hard landing and the gear goes, you saw the 757 where the nose bent, a few months back. That would be a good example of an airplane comes into an airport that doesn't normally do that kind of work, but it can't fly out. So that's the only choice they have, is to cut it up. And so those happen occasionally, and those are one-offs. And so we may gather some information on what it costs to do that there, but I don't know how relative or I don't know how important that is to us, because those may be very high prices simply because those airports don't do that.
So basically, it's really unknown.
I think it really is. I think it really is. We may find different as we start doing some research for numbers, but at this point, I don't know of any, and we haven't found any that were airport controlled directly. Mhm.
If,
Go ahead.
if there are other pads at other airports, obviously that's a key. But to ensure, when Randy was talking earlier about this, and he said, well, how would we do that? You know, there's different ways to lease things out. So you could do it on a time frame, you know, a certain amount per day, or you can do it on a per aircraft basis as far as you tear them up. But because of his concerns and possibly other tenants' concerns, I would think that those two would have to be tied together so that anybody knows if they're going to keep it for 2 weeks, however many airplanes they've got to put together on that.
Right.
To get it done in that 2 weeks, that's up to them. But if there's an advantage to them to dispose of or cut up 10 aircraft in 2 weeks, I don't know that that can be done at all. Then we need to, from a cost effectiveness standpoint, we need to look at that also. Because what'll happen is they'll load that thing up, demolish a bunch of aircraft, and demolish the pad quicker if they do something like that.
So, I think I get what you're saying. So the numbers, like, I'm making up numbers here. $10 a day and $5 per aircraft. Something like that, maybe.
I think we don't know what those are at all.
No.
Yeah, we've got to, I think they need to be tied together because the
Okay.
longevity, I mean, I would think something like this
Yeah.
should be operational for 20 years, but maybe 10. I don't know. I don't know what the lifetime is of it.
When we discussed that with Lewis a while back, that was what he came up with, was about 20 years.
Okay,
And yeah, we want to make sure it doesn't go away in 10,
yeah.
you know, so, no, I think that's,
So if it's being overused
yeah,
from a public standpoint,
yeah,
I mean, that's benefiting the jobs and everything else, I get that. But we gotta make sure that if it's supposed to last 20 years, that
Right.
it at least lasts 17 or 18 years.
no, I think that's a really good comment, that we consider time and what's being done on it at the same time. You know, that's something I think that we should look at real hard and make sure it's reasonable, but it protects us and gives our tenants what they need.
I don't know how that's structured in a lease, but
I think.
we need to consider it.
Yeah, I think, you know, we'll get with legal on that when we actually put the document together, but I think it would be similar to what we do now with, well, like what we do right now, we have the Longhorn area on the east side, and Mystic uses that often, and we have a land use agreement that we do with that. And I think this would be similar to that, same type of considerations. We'd probably have to put some specialized stuff in there because they're tearing down an aircraft, but I think it would be very similar to that.
By the same token, if this becomes a public teardown pad, we need to have a portion of the fees, and I don't know how you do this in a public entity, but a portion of the fees go into a reserve to repair/replace the pad at some point in the future.
I think that's a great idea.
Just like business folks do that
Mhm.
for depreciation of apartment complex, so that they can be refurbished.
I think that would be wise.
That's actually kind of difficult for governing bodies to set funds away.
And it may not be. Maybe you can't do it.
Right.
Yeah, that's a bigger subject.
That is, and it's challenging, but it's one of our realities. Okay, any more at this point today about the tear down pad? Because I think do you feel comfortable, you know where we want to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so on to the discussion of next month, my understanding is that we will get from Mr. Holloman the building code section, and then the updated version of, is it building codes?
Zoning.
I'm sorry.
The zoning code?
Zoning code, I'm sorry. Zoning code section, the green section.
Right.
The green section, a revised version of the blue section, and then we will talk more about the tear-down pad approach, and we're hoping that Aragon will be present to do an overview on that. Is there anything else we want to try and bite off?
I've got one more question. Scott,
Sure.
on blading all this stuff off out there, is there any kind of stuff that can be used and use our tenant that we've got out there that provides asphalt type stuff? Is there anything that can be relatively inexpensively, well, nothing's inexpensive. Is there anything that can be done
$24 a barrel, let's take
to reduce your maintenance costs and dirt? We've been around here a long time, and the wind hasn't started. But when the wind
We know
starts,
it will.
when
It
the
started
wind
this morning.
starts, and if there's no rain, and there's just dirt out there, it is gonna be a dust bowl.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree with you. There will be a lot of dust, and yeah, that's something that we need to explore. And Riley's over here nodding his head, and I know he's right. There is some inexpensive oil that we can put out there. And of course, we were joking as we were listening, but the oil's down to $29 a barrel. So
Just get a barrel, or a
What's
bunch
that?
of barrels, yeah.
yeah, so yeah, oil's pretty cheap. So I would hope that those emulsions are getting cheaper too.
Yeah, just don't tell the EPA.
Right? Well, emulsion's organic, it's okay. But, and the other side of that too is most of what we're dealing with right now is that, is all on old asphalt, so that helps. It does not stop the dust altogether. We will still get quite a bit of it, but it does help that it's not straight soil.
Okay. All right, unless there's some other issues, I'm going to call us adjourned at 11:25. We're good? All right. We'll see everybody around the campus, it's 11:25, we're adjourned. Thank you. All right.